Hi.
Hello. We're doing a book review for the first time in a while today. I don't even know if we've ever done one together before.
No.
But the reason we're doing this one together is because both of us were greatly impressed and influenced by this book. Listening to the Giants, Warren Wiersbe. I think you've mentioned him in one of your own videos, book reviews.
Yeah.
But this is a book that helped us, not only in our Christian life, early on especially, but it's in our book business. It helped us immensely, because here's the title page, Listening to the Giants, A Guide to Good Reading and Great Preaching.
Yeah, and because we were fresh out of the Watchtower, so these are in the early days, I think it helped us, guide us as to who to listen to, who to read.
Who were reliable,
Yeah.
trustworthy, are those good words? If you're an ex-Jehovah's Witness, you need to know who you can trust and who's peripheral. And that's what Wiersbe is really good at. This is not his only book, but this is the first one we read. And in this book, he deals with 13 different famous preachers from all different backgrounds of churches, Christendom, denominations. And he also has about 100 pages on books alone toward the end of it, where he talks about different types of books, like preaching on the miracles or preaching on the parables. You know, this is a new world when you're leaving the Watchtower. There's an actual there's books, not just one book, but dozens of books about the parables and about the miracles.
Yeah. And the fact that there's such a variety of people that you can read. You know, you don't have to just go to one source. And then I wanted to mention that in doing this and reading the different people, they, you know, when you read the Watchtower, it's like, it sounds the same. Every single Watchtower sounds the same.
Same
like
flavor?
the same person wrote it. That's the way it sounds. There's no individuality in any of the writing. So yeah, you get one flavor, that's it. But when you're reading different people, their personality is allowed to be in the text. You can get their warmth or their sense of humor, their saltiness. It comes out in their writing. But it's not concentrating on themselves. They're not talking about themselves. It's just their writing style comes through. And that makes reading so much more enjoyable.
Not to mention nourishing.
Yeah, I think that's why people don't like to read.
I think we need to make the point up front so we don't forget that all 13 of the preachers, pastors that are in this book, authors too, a lot of them are preachers and authors. Some of the books recommended in here are collections of sermons, but some are commentaries. Some are expositions of Scripture. We'll get to the specifics of that in a minute. But all 13 of the guys featured in this book, interestingly, Wiersbe couldn't have known this, but they're contemporaries of Russell and Rutherford, and that made the the discovery all the more exciting.
For us, it was a good contrast. You know, we had, when we were leaving, we had started to read, for me, first time reading Russell and Rutherford, and then seeing this contrast in style and in tone.
And in durability, is that a good word? Books that can and are still reprinted today. And of course, to a witness, that is, wow. Why is that?
I would say these people had a huge impact on my spiritual health. Warren Wiersbe himself has been very influential in my life, because he's written about every Bible book. I think in one of the other videos we did, I mentioned a series that he did called the B books. So this one's Be Hopeful on 1 Peter. This one's Be Right on Romans. But he's also done a lot of different Bible characters too.
And subjects.
And subjects. So I like Warren Wiersbe because he has lots of memory aids, and I need those. Like ways in which to say something that will make it stick. And because I started later to teach other young people, so teaching Sunday school and youth groups, they're not too heavy, not too technical, his books, but yet very practical. And I would say some of the other writers that I enjoyed specifically that he recommended, same thing. They were very practical. I wasn't ready for steak dinners. I was wanting bite-sized meals, and these guys provided it. So he mentions FB Meyer in here. And
Great Baptist preacher.
Yeah, and he also, Harry Ironside.
Who was from a Salvation Army background, but became brethren in his later career.
Just to show you, Harry Ironside, he did a lot of commentaries. Well, not really commentaries.
More expositions of Bible books.
Yeah. So this one, it happens to be on Lamentations and Jeremiah, but he does all different Bible books and character studies. They all do things like that, and practical daily living type books.
Maybe it's a good place to interrupt and talk about something maybe we haven't addressed before, the difference between exposition of the Bible and a Bible commentary. These are popular preachers, so they would tend to preach sermon series through Bible books and then collect them together in that kind of format.
Right. So
300-400 pages.
It's not
maybe.
Doing verse by verse. It's not that kind of commentary.
No, a commentary, a technical commentary.
It will deal with the basics of the entire book.
Yeah, coverage of the whole book. So you get context, but you don't get deep analysis of the verbiage that is the Greek and the Hebrew and the theological stuff. They're preaching again to a general audience.
Right.
Same with FB Meyer here.
FB Meyer. These are all Bible character books. So so I've got here Abraham, Elijah, and Peter. But he does all kinds of Bible characters. Plus he does a lot of books on subjects, Christian living, just things you might be curious about. He does devotional type commentaries or how did you call them? Not
expositions.
Expositions. Sorry. Expositions. So he does ones like on Peter. I remember him doing one on Peter.
Jacob, Moses, like you said, Elijah.
Yeah.
About 8 of them altogether. But he's famous as a preacher. Again, preachers do exposition at best, whereas the technical commentaries you have to go elsewhere. I'll talk about one or two of those in a minute.
Right.
Again, the difference in the appeal of each style here. Ironside is very good if you like a lot of salt and spice with your reading.
Yeah.
But FB Meyer and a couple of others we're going to mention are more elegant. They're very impressive as writing, as opposed to preaching.
Yeah.
And also the guys who came slightly before Ironside tend to be far more poetic and in their language, and that's not to the taste of everybody. Ironside is more to the modern
I think
taste.
they're very human. They're very warm.
That's true.
Their personality comes through, and they're very practical in the things that they talk about, things that you're going to have to deal with in life. The other one that is recommended in this book is Drummond, and one of the very first books I read as a Christian was a book by Drummond, and it was The Greatest Gift, the greatest thing in the world. And it was the love chapter in 1 Corinthians, just about that. It is a tiny little book. I don't remember anything specific in it, but I do remember the tone of the book impressed me. So oftentimes I find, even if I've lost all the details, because it's years ago that I read it, I do remember the tone of the personality of the person comes through. And so it was interesting when I read this book, because he gives you the little bit about the history of the
few pages of bio.
Yeah, so you get a little taste for them. But when Drummond died, one of the people who worked with him, who was very different than him in his stance, in his position, Moody, was very conservative.
Dwight Moody.
And Drummond believed in evolution. So, I mean, these are all, like, to me as a new Christian and an ex-witness, I was like, ooh, how can these two fit together? It didn't seem to match well. And yet, I wanted to read you the comment that he writes about Drummond.
Who died, by the way, at the age of 46.
Yeah. So he's writing to a friend who's James Stalker, is also very good
famous
writer,
preacher of the day,
but written lots of good books. he's writing to him, and his stance is a little different too.
He's moderately conservative,
in the middle.
Whereas Dwight Moody would be called today a fundamentalist.
Yeah.
And Henry Drummond would be called a liberal today.
So a lot of even then, I guess there were people who wondered at these people working together. So this is what Moody writes about Drummond. He says, Drummond was one of, well, this is Wiersbe's comment. Drummond was one of Moody's friends, and Moody called Drummond one of the most lovable men I have ever known. Moody wrote to James Stalker, no man has ever been with me for any length of time that I did not see something that was unlike Christ. And I often see it in myself, but not in Henry Drummond. All the time we were together, he was a Christ-like man, and often a rebuke to me. And then Wiersbe makes the comment, and yet Drummond was an evolutionist and an advocate of higher criticism. So he was still able to work with this man because he could see he was Christ-like. He could see he was genuine.
But the lay people who might have listened to Moody most of the time rejected his position about Drummond. But this is another characteristic we've picked up over the years, that clergy, especially the very skilled people, the very trained people like these ones we're talking about, are far more tolerant of diversity in peripheral positions than lay people tend to be.
Yeah. So I think a lot of times we tend to make a hard line just because of a position that a person has on a specific. Whereas we stop looking at the person.
Yeah.
Look at the person. Are they Christ-like? Do they love Christ?
Do they love people? This is one of the things that they said about Drummond, that his passion for, especially for young people, for helping young people come to Christ, was something that inspired everybody, not just young people.
Do they practice what they're saying? You know, if that's true, then I think we should leave the other things aside. You might never agree with them on some things, but leave that aside and look at the genuineness of their following Christ.
The question is God using them?
Yes.
And Drummond, everybody could see that Christ was using Henry Drummond. Everybody but a few. I guess we should throw that one in. There are people who would reject the Henry Drummond to this day because of his stances on evolution and higher criticism. It's very much the same today.
So these books helped break down my prejudices and also my misconceptions about Christendom and about the people in Christendom. Just like having the bookstore, we were meeting people from all different denominations, and that broke away a lot of the assumptions I made about them simply from what I'd heard from the Watchtower all my life.
In other words, you were prejudiced.
Yeah, I was.
You didn't know these people.
That had to be broken away.
Yeah.
And it was helped by meeting people and by reading people of various backgrounds and various denominations and various stances.
I want to talk a bit more about some of the people in Listening to the Giants, but we'll get to some more examples, the ones that specifically impressed me, in the next segment.
Okay.